You are in the middle of chaos and feel like everything has collapsed? That collapse is exactly what you need to forge your soul. The crisis that seems to be destroying you is actually a portal to your greatest strength, and today you will discover that the crisis is not your failure, but the field of action of an ancient and intelligent force. Hermes, the god of crossings. He does not want you to return to what you once were, but to transform. And here lies the secret almost no one tells. Whoever learns to traverse the chaos without begging for certainty is reborn indestructible. In this video, I will show you why the crisis that scares you today can be the initiation that liberates you. We will expose the hidden engineering behind chaos, decipher how Hermes works in your transitions, and, above all, teach you how to cross sovereignly, so that, in the end, you not only survive, but become impossible to break. There are times when life seems like a great maze, isn't there? You look to the sides and only see uncertainty, confusing decisions, paths that close off. It feels as though the ground has vanished beneath you. But let me tell you something almost no one says, that chaos does not mean the end. On the contrary, it is a portal. A portal of transition. The crisis, as painful as it may be, is the announcement that something old no longer serves you. You are not falling into an abyss. You are crossing an invisible bridge, built as you walk. And who governs this crossing is a god many do not even know exists, yet who has been working behind the scenes of your soul all along. There are moments when life resembles a giant puzzle in which, suddenly, all the pieces vanish from the table. What once felt secure now disintegrates like sand slipping through your fingers. Certainties slide away, answers evaporate, and you are left with that anguished sensation of being lost. But this despair carries a secret few perceive. Chaos did not come to sink you, but to move you. Every time the structure you knew collapses, know that it is a sign you are about to traverse an invisible portal. Life is not punishing you, it is initiating you. And this is where Hermes' role begins to reveal itself, even if you don't realize it yet. Hermes is the master of crossings. He rules the moments when old rules no longer apply, but new ones have not yet arrived. When a relationship ends without explanation, when the dream job becomes a burden, or when that restlessness appears for no apparent reason, be certain, Hermes is at work. He does not create stability. He creates movement. Do not expect logic in your paths. Hermes destabilizes to make you grow. Your soul has been called to cross, and the discomfort you feel now is merely the announcement of that crossing. Many, at this point, fall into despair. They rush to try to stop the pain, search for magical answers, try to go back to normal, as if it were possible to return to a time that no longer exists. But that is not how the soul evolves. True movement happens when you can sustain discomfort without fleeing from it. That is where the strength of the one who crosses consciously lies. Anxiety arises precisely because we try to control the uncontrollable. And Hermes, smiling in silence, simply watches while life reorganizes what you are still trying to hold on to. Imagine a boat adrift in a turbulent river. If you try to row against the current, you exhaust yourself. If you let go of the oar and trust the flow, the river carries you. Such is the Hermetic crisis. Deep down, you are not lost. You are between worlds. Neither the person you were, nor yet the person you will become. This limbo is the sacred space of transformation, the nursery of your new self. And the more you try to cling to the past, the more intense the suffering becomes. The old has already fulfilled its role. Now, the new is calling you. That pain that tightens your chest, that mental confusion, that feeling of not knowing the next step, these are all symptoms of metamorphosis happening within. The mind still tries to make sense with old logic, but the soul already knows the call is different. And this is where many lose themselves. They confuse the discomfort of change with a sign of mistake. It is not a mistake. It is birth. I even recommend a simple exercise. Write down daily everything that has slipped out of your control and observe how, days later, those same situations rearrange themselves in ways you never imagined. Now, there is an even deeper question behind all this. Why does Hermes throw us into this ambiguous territory? Why, instead of opening clear paths, does he insist on keeping us in confusion? The answer is not in logic, but in the very workings of the soul. And to understand this, we need to dive into Hermes' true domain, invisible crossings. What makes Hermes so fascinating is precisely his craft of moving souls through territories no one sees. He does not appear in moments of stability nor act when life is under control. Hermes emerges when the road vanishes. He is the god of crossroads, of secret paths, of routes that open unpredictably. When an unexpected opportunity arises, when a forced change occurs, when an encounter completely alters your destiny, rest assured, Hermes is whispering in the background of your story. James Hillman said that Hermes governs the soul's movement, and movement, my dear, is never comfortable. He pushes, pulls, disorganizes. It is that unsolicited invitation to leave a stable job and risk a new project. It is that unexpected love that emerges amid chaos. It is the move to a city that seemed impossible until yesterday. Hermes acts in those moments when life pulls the ground out from under us to give us wings, even if at first it feels like a leap into darkness. And do you know what confuses many people? Hermes does not provide an instruction manual. He does not point out the next step linearly. On the contrary, he creates multiple possibilities. Some seem absurd, others frightening. But all carry a hidden invitation to grow. In this game, the problem is not doubt, but the desperation for certainty. Because it is in its absence that your true wisdom begins to emerge. The soul only matures on the field of uncertainty. Think of how many times you stood before doors that seemed closed, and suddenly, another possibility appeared where you least expected. Hermes opens shortcuts that only reveal themselves to those who dare to keep walking, even without seeing the entire map. That is why those who try to control the path too much often lock up. It is like trying to push a river with your hands. Hermes does not want you to control. He wants you to learn to navigate. There is, in fact, a very beautiful symbol associated with Hermes, the caduceus, with two snakes entwined spiraling upward. The snakes represent life's dual movement, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes entwined, sometimes diverging. It is this dance of contradictions that builds the new within you. The crisis, then, is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that your soul is being called to integrate opposites, to mature through paradox. But danger lurks precisely at this point in the crossing. It is when the temptation arises to return to the well-known, to recreate what once existed, to seek the illusory comfort of what used to be. And this is where Hermes tests who is truly willing to cross. Let's talk about that now. In the midst of the crossing, the greatest danger is not the chaos itself. It is attachment. It is the mind desperately trying to hold on to what has already died, as if trying to sew dead leaves back onto a tree. When life begins to crumble, the natural impulse is to restore what existed before. If I can get that job back, if that person gives me another chance, if everything returns to normal. But here is a hard truth. What you call normal was precisely what needed to end. It is the old trying to prevent the birth of the new. The mind abhors the void, and so it creates illusions. It paints the past with colors more beautiful than they truly were. The worn-out relationship becomes nostalgia for the good times. The oppressive job becomes security. The suffering of stagnation becomes comfort zone. But the soul knows. It knows that behind this desire to go back lies only fear. Fear of not knowing what comes next. Fear of relinquishing control. Fear of crossing into the unknown. It is like a castaway who insists on carrying his luggage while drowning. The heavier the load, the harder it is to swim. The same happens here. The more you try to salvage old versions of yourself, the heavier the path becomes. Suffering does not arise from the crisis itself, but from resistance to transformation. True pain is not in losing what no longer serves. It is in refusing to let go of what has already fulfilled its mission. If you look honestly, you will see how many times you have tried to resurrect something already dead. Relationships that existed only out of habit. Projects that continued only out of fear of trying something new. Commitments that persisted only out of social obligation. And deep down, you felt the weight, felt the emptiness, yet you continued. Because sometimes the familiar, even if painful, seems more bearable than the liberating unknown. This is where the archetype of Hermes acts with the greatest force. He destabilizes precisely so you will let go of the old. He forces the cracks so the light can penetrate. And the more you resist, the more intense the chaos seems to become. Therefore, observe. What are you trying to hold onto today, even knowing it no longer makes sense? That question alone already begins to open the first inner doors. Now understand something even deeper. It is not only the old that binds you. Hermes has a peculiar way of testing. He not only destroys the old, he also jumbles the new. He creates ambiguity. He confuses precisely to see if you are ready to walk without needing guarantees. And it is on this hermetic ambiguity that we will dive now. Hermes is a master at creating internal crossroads. He does not put merely two clear paths before you, he scrambles everything. He opens multiple doors at once, making each appear as promising as it is dangerous. He leaves your heart divided, your mind confused, and your soul restless. This ambiguity is no accident. It is part of the test. It is the invitation for you to stop seeking external answers and finally begin listening to your internal compass. Because in the Hermetic domain, the one who survives is not the one who has certainties, but the one who endures not knowing. Most people cannot endure ambiguity. They want the right or the wrong, yes or no, sure or unsafe. But emotional maturity begins when one accepts the space between those extremes. It is in that gray, uncomfortable ground that the soul gains strength. Hillman said, "The soul does not want to be saved, it wants to be deepened." And there is no depth without traversing those nebulous layers where nothing seems to have a definitive shape. Think of those situations when you have already experienced this hermetic game. A job offer that seems good, but brings fear. A relationship that starts intensely, but with doubts. A move to another city that excites and terrifies you at the same time. It is in those moments that Hermes acts strongly. He creates the discomfort of multiplicity. And while you seek external guarantees, he simply watches, waiting for you to create, at last, an internal axis that can endure the crossing. This is where many people stall. They want someone to say, "It will work out, go ahead." But Hermes does not hand out ready-made maps. What he offers is precisely the fertile ground of doubt because he knows it is there that true autonomy is born. When you stop depending on others' certainties and begin to sustain your own choices even in the dark, something rare begins to emerge: inner sovereignty. See, I am not saying it is comfortable. On the contrary, it is profoundly challenging. It requires presence, it requires self-restraint, it requires the courage not to rush toward any solution simply to relieve anxiety. Hermes does not reward haste. He rewards active patience, the ability to breathe amid the storm, to observe your own impulses without being swept away by them. And precisely at this point in the crossing, when ambiguity seems unbearable, the first spark of the traveler's wisdom begins to appear. Here is where you can learn to traverse without losing yourself. But how do you do this in practice? How do you maintain your axis amid so many internal conflicting forces? That is what we will explore now. The true art of crossing a crisis is not in eliminating chaos, but in learning to walk within it without disintegrating. It is like crossing a fog. You cannot see the end, but you trust the next step. And the first step is to let go of the need for immediate control. That habit of wanting ready-made answers, of demanding absolute guarantees, only fuels anxiety. The crossing requires something more subtle: presence. Being wholly in the now, even when the now feels uncomfortable. It is not passivity, it is an active vigilance over oneself. One of the most powerful exercises here is to ask yourself honest questions. Not those that only amplify fear, but those that deepen awareness. Ask, what is dying in me that I am still trying to resurrect? This simple reflection already begins to release the weight that prevents your advance. Many times, what hurts is not what you are losing, but your resistance to accepting that it no longer belongs in your story. Another fundamental point is learning to observe the subtle signs of change. Life speaks. Small encounters, synchronistic events, unexpected conversations, everything starts to align when you are attentive. For example, that unexpected invitation to a new project, that book that seems written for your moment, that casual meeting with someone who brings a new perspective. These are the small whispers of Hermes indicating the wind's direction. But pay attention. Listening is not the same as acting impulsively. Hermes also tests our capacity to restrain the urge to act solely to escape pain. Before deciding, breathe. Give your heart time to settle. Many answers only emerge in silence. That is why, in such moments, practices like meditation, solitary walks in nature, or even daily journaling during the crossing are so powerful. They do not resolve the chaos outside, but they organize the chaos within. Amid external noise, cultivating internal silence is the greatest act of sovereignty. It is there that you hear the only voice that truly matters, your own. Not the voice of anxiety, but the voice of wisdom that emerges when you stop seeking outside what can only be found within. And this does not mean isolating yourself from the world, but creating small daily rituals of reconnection with yourself. It can be waking up early and having coffee in silence. It can be walking without a phone. It can be turning off social media for a few hours. Small pauses that strengthen your axis. And as this internal axis solidifies, something extraordinary begins to be born, a new identity. A version of you that no longer depends on old certainties to exist. And it is precisely this silent birth that we will talk about now. After crossing the chaos, sustaining ambiguity, and releasing the old, something begins to happen within you, almost imperceptible at first, like a shoot breaking through the soil in silence. The crisis was not punishment. It was an initiation. And what now comes into being is not a simple, better version of your old self, but someone essentially new. It is the birth of an identity that is no longer built to please or belong, but to exist in peace with itself. Hillman said, "The soul does not want to be healed, it wants to be deepened." And that is precisely what the Hermetic crossing promotes. In this new internal space, old obsessions lose their strength. The arguments that once consumed you now seem irrelevant. The people who drew you into drama begin to drift away naturally. Not because you are fleeing, but because your frequency has changed. You are no longer an automatic reactor to external stimuli. Now, you have become a creator of your own axis. This is where true individuation begins to take shape. The curious thing is that, in the eyes of others, you may even seem distant, cold, different. Some will say you've changed too much. And indeed, you have changed, but not because you have become harsher, but because you have become more whole. Before, you splintered yourself to fit others' molds. Now, you inhabit your own space. And that scares those who only knew how to deal with your fragile, available version. Your new presence exposes the lack of axis in others. This new identity also redefines your choices. You no longer accept relationships based on emotional dependency, jobs that drain your energy, conversations that repeat in circles. Everything now passes through a single filter: what nourishes your peace and expands your soul. The rest dissolves by its own gravity. It is like exchanging noise for silence, not an empty silence, but a fertile one, full of meaning. Of course, there is a price to pay. At times, solitude will visit you. After all, not everyone can walk alongside someone who has chosen their own sovereignty. But this solitude does not hurt as it once did. It becomes a temple of reconnection, a space where you hear what noise once muffled, your true voice. And in that full silence, you discover something surprising. You are enough. Complete. Capable of sustaining yourself from within outward. But the most beautiful part of this journey is yet to come. Because it is precisely from that state of wholeness that you begin to attract what you have always sought. Authentic connections, real purposes, a life in resonance with your truth. And now that you understand what truly happens during your crises, the question that remains is simple, but powerful. Will you keep trying to save the old? Or are you ready to truly cross? Because the crossing does not demand guarantees. It demands courage. Courage to let go of what no longer serves. Courage to walk even without seeing the end. Courage to choose your own peace, even if it unsettles those who always benefited from your imbalance. Think carefully. How many times have you sacrificed your own peace to please, to maintain the familiar, or to avoid loneliness? How many times have you tried to stitch back together a life that had already ended? This crisis is not punishing you. It is freeing you. But freedom only happens when you choose to cross, consciously, wholly, sovereignly. Now I want to hear from you. If this message touched you, if you feel ready to cross this crisis with awareness, write in the comments, "I cross." That way, I will know how many here are truly ready to break with the old and begin the new. And if you want to keep diving into this universe of archetypal psychology, internal crossings, and true transformation, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, because what comes in the next episodes will give you even deeper tools to cross any chaos, and emerge on the other side more whole than you have ever been. Until next time.